So I would love to introduce our panelists. Shayna, who is an applied ML scientist at Vector Institute and has a focus on responsible AI. So Shayna, thank you so much for being here. She has over 10 years of research experience, dozens of journal and conference publications. She holds a PhD in Comp Sci from Toronto Metropolitan University and is also a postdoctoral fellow at Dalla Lana School of Public Health. One thing we haven't talked about in this webinar, but we do in past ones, is this idea of combining multiple subjects. So Shayna, I'm excited to hear about your experience of working in public health, working in comp sci, really exciting stuff. Sal is our second panelist. He's the director of AI and analytics product management at RBC Capital Markets. He's an MMAI grad from Queen's University. I know we've got a lot of those at Vector, so it's really cool to see someone who's a few years out now coming from that program. He also has an MSc in financial math from the University of Leeds. Sal's focus has been around AI product management, 0 to 1 product development, scaling data, and ML-driven products. So very much focused on that product management vision and side of things. So two very different profiles, very different types of work that people do. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see all of us. Thank you again for joining us. With this in mind, I'll start with one question that well, actually two questions, heads up, that I have for you. The first one is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten when it comes to planning your long-term career path? Shayna, maybe we can start with you.
I think like for long-term career path, like first of all, we need to start very early. What are actually goals and interests, definitely. And I think like whatever thing that interests you, no matter what discipline is it should not be just the hype, but what interests you, what discipline interests you. So just like giving your focus time to it from the very beginning. For example, like some of my students, mentees, or interns that I work, so I always ask them the question that, like for example, some of them are now working in the Meta, Amazon, or other companies. So I asked them that, how did you plan your transition? So they said when we were in the high school or after the high school, we had this thing in our mind, and we start doing, for example, this coding test or like this publication stuff, and we start planning from that, like much earlier than a average person start. So I think planning early is very, very much important. What is your focus? And once we decide, then we can give our focus time to this.
Wow, that is intimidating. And scary. Sal, what about yourself? What's the best piece of career advice you've gotten from a long-term planning perspective?
Yeah, I think somebody told me, and it still resonates with me, is like careers are not ladders, they are jungle gyms. And that is such a nicely worded way of saying those things, is that's something that always stood with me. So I never take career as a ladder progression, for sure, after that.
I love that. That's a really great saying, because it really is for a lot of folks. So then the flip side of this, and maybe Sal, we can start with you. What is the worst piece of advice you've gotten? Advice that you heard and either maybe followed or didn't follow, and in hindsight, you're really happy that you didn't follow it.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot over here. Um, I I think maybe again around the same aspect that you should always stay within the same discipline, and become more of a specialist maybe. And I'm maybe more biased towards, because I'm in product management and you have to know so many different things when it comes to products. So being married to just one thing and making that into a profession, because it's very hard to predict the future. And with where we are right now, I have always been more in favor of being a generalist as opposed to being a specialist. So I think that probably is one.
Wonderful. And Shayna, same question. What's bad advice you've gotten that either you wish you ignored or you did ignore?
I think like I cannot recall, but like sometimes some years ago, like from some mentors, like not the mentors, the supervisor, this kind of advice that you cannot do this. And I think that's the worst advice, because I mean, all of us have the ability to do anything we wish. So that's the only thing in my mind.
Oh, I love that. And it's true, right? I mean, I think it's very one thing that I've seen going through all of this is the fact that I think determination is actually such a key part of it, right? It's easy to get dejected and uncomfortable and give up, but the people that stick it out are the ones that ultimately get the thing that they're looking for, right? So I love that. One of the sets of questions, this is like a theme of questions that's coming up through the Q&A, is this idea around generalist versus technical roles, of course. So, I mean, we've been talking about this quite a bit, but it seems like quite a few folks are concerned about, about making that decision. And again, Shayna, maybe I'll start with you here because you've obviously really doubled down on research and you've been publishing quite a bit. I'm curious, how do you think, well, and by the way, and you're also working in other spaces like public health, which is really fascinating. So when you think about the trade-offs of going really deep from a technical perspective or not going deep necessarily, how do you think about that? Or what advice would you give people who are making this decision of, do I go deep on research versus maybe try a more generalist path?
I think like having a more generalist path is better. Like if I have to go 10 years back, so I will adopt
Oh,
this approach, being more generalist. The reason is that the deeper you go into your field, so sometimes like you face like challenges, for example, imposter syndrome, or like you get so much in the depth that you lose the bigger picture. So I think
hmm.
being generalist is better, and you can always then specialize in your particular field. That's my perspective.
Do you think that's the case? Is there a difference there with folks who want to be, who are, let's say, are getting PhDs and debating whether to stick it out in academia versus go into the corporate world, or does your advice apply to both?
I think this is only for the, I mean, this kind of advice for the people who want to go into the corporate world or industry. If somebody want to follow the PhD path, let's say like if somebody is planning to be an assistant professor or to be an academic or pure researcher, then I think a specialization, this path is good. Just like the way I am doing, for example, like I have been working in the news recommender systems like from 6 or 7 years now, and then even I work on the public health. My things are related to those fairness and the news recommender systems and the biases. However, like if I have to give this advice to my mentees, and if they're not to the industry, so I will always say them, be journalists and like get a knowledge from each piece. It doesn't you get overwhelmed with all this information, but at least pick 5 6 focus area and then start concentrating them. So what I
Hmm.
say them, then draw a Venn diagram and path, that what are the intersections of the field you want to work, and then start focusing on that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And last question for you, and don't worry, Sal, we're going to get to you and focus on product management in a minute as well. You mentioned fairness, Shayna, and this is a really interesting area of AI research right now. And I know quite a few people want to be involved in it. Do you see that as an explicit skill that people can be developing and working on and eventually building careers around? Or is it more kind of like communication, like where we should all kind of be aware of it, but you don't expect people to have like full-time roles focused on fairness and ethics in the way that we maybe would expect?
I think definitely this is going to be a very, very big area. The reason is that big tech companies, for example, Google, Meta, Microsoft, even Vector have their own like responsible AI principles. So
Hmm.
definitely. So what I see basically now, like I know every day a new LLM pop up and it take all the feed in your LinkedIn or your Twitter, but like they are going to their maximum height. After this, what will happen? People will start working on the equity or the fairness or this aspect, because I think they have gone to the maximum height and now it's time to see them more responsibly. And definitely this is going to open many new job postings. For example, I myself these days see in the LinkedIn new kind of roles, for example, responsible AI data engineer, responsible AI ML specialist. So this is going to
Hmm.
be a whole new thing, and especially with these LLMs, like the issues, for example, the AI risk, for example, the jailbreaking, the hallucinations and these kind of stuff. So definitely these tech companies, they need more people to come and work on these problems. So it is going to be a very new and 5 year, at least what I see.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for that. And Sal, switching to you, I know one thing that's coming up in a lot of the Q&A here is also product management. A lot of people feel like this is a very soft, ill-defined space, but they also get excited about it because it feels like you could do so many different things here. What, number one, I'd love to actually just hear, what does AI product management mean to you? And if you had advice to folks in terms of, folks who want to start a career in this AI product management space, what would you recommend they do?
Yeah, no, I think product management as a principle has become now really defined. And if you go in, especially if you go in large tech companies or large corporations, they would have very defined role of what a product manager actually has to do. You can basically classify product managers into growth product managers, feature product managers, infrastructure product managers, and AI product managers. And essentially, if you're working in a large corporation, you have very defined career paths when you choose a particular field. I think from an AI product management perspective, you could definitely go into two different aspects. Either become an AI technical program manager, which is basically working with scientists, engineers, and building large infrastructure AI-based products. The other thing you could do is be more on the consumer side, either B2B or B2C, where you would have to have knowledge of AI. But I think more than that, you would need to have the knowledge of the customers. And if you are building something that customers actually like, and would they, if they come back to the application. So that requires a lot of skill set around customer acquisition, customer questions, UX design. So those things will always remain there, even if you are an AI product manager, for instance.
Interesting. And how, for people that aren't sure if they want to do product management, but they're certainly curious about it, what are things they could do to test whether this is something they'd enjoy or be good at?
Yeah, I think if you're working for a large corporation, even if you're an engineer, for instance, if you're an engineer who's trying to figure out whether product management is the right place for him, I think in large organizations you'll always be working with a product manager, and so working with him or her and tying in and looking into the work that they do, because some of the times the things that they would do are hidden away from the engineers, like talking to customers, doing strategy work. And I think in most cases, if you ask your product manager that I want to be a part of those discussions, either just be a silent spectator or be active in that role, I think they will give you that opportunity. So I think that could be a no risk way of finding out whether you actually like the role or not.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that. And okay, so the other set of questions that we're getting here, quite a few of them, as you probably saw in the webinar, quite a few people are concerned about their job prospects right now. They, I think it's something like 75%, I'm doing very quick mental math here, are either concerned or very concerned when it comes to their job search. And, Sal, maybe again, starting with you here, for someone who's just starting, they're looking for their first job right now, coming out of school, what would be your recommendation what are the things they could do to maximize the likelihood that, that the employer will reach out to them or follow up with their application?
Right. So I think the first thing that I want to say is I've been through these cycles a number of times. I've got like 15 years of experience. And I think if I put myself into shoes, when I was coming out during the 2010 financial crisis, and it felt like the world was collapsing. And these things never continue for a very long period of time. And if you are in a field like AI, I think there's nothing much to be worried about. It's a small cycle that will pass. So I just want to start off with saying that I think the things that you can do to showcase is be out there, be networking, take part in projects, do voluntary work. In my cases, I love to connect with people. I host events that really helps in product management, speaking to clients, all of that you can practice as a result of that. So I would say doing things outside of work is really, really important. And don't stop that once you find a job. And you doing that. Because I think one of the things that has helped me a lot is being introduced to new fields that I wasn't even aware of. And I was like, wow, I'm really excited about these things. And just networking with people and finding out about things opens up the world for you. So I think don't ever stop that.
Okay, you've got me curious. What's a field, like a new field that's opened up to you because of all of this that you didn't even know exists?
Yeah, so I'm actually, Wojciech, probably I told you, I'm in the process of fundraising, and the entire VC field was something that was not like I wasn't sure about. I knew that existed, but it felt so far away. But then I started talking to people who are actually in that field, and I was like, look, man, this is not so hard to do. Or I love this thing, and it involves talking to people, and I have a lot of skills that I already have. And so so that's something that I learned as I was interacting with people who are in that field. So that's one thing that opened up for me for sure.
Oh, that's such a great example. I don't think anyone's told me in the Q&A that they want to be a VC yet, so maybe that'll change. And Shayna, same question for you. Or you know, what advice would you have for folks to make sure that they stand out, or make sure that they really emphasize their competence and capabilities, and that they get responses from folks they're applying to?
Yeah, I agree very much with what Sal has mentioned, like networking and like going out of your comfort zone and like updating yourself. That's very important. For example, like there was a time around 2016 or 17 when I was working in pure ML. So somebody advised me that I just recall. So she said that quickly update yourself for the deep learning, because this is going to be the next thing, and what are you working is going to be obsolete. So I think updating yourself, networking, having some feeds, having a right mentor and some guidance. Even sometimes we have to volunteer in some of the projects just to get a sense that how people are working. These all things help in your personality building and your career paths. And yeah, I mean, that's very much I have to say.
Oh, that's so I love this though. So in 2016, you've got a mentor or someone that you know tells you you got to do the deep neural networks thing or the deep learning thing. What did you literally just take their advice, or were you a little skeptical at the time? Like, what was your thought process like?
So first time when she gave me the advice, she was my PhD supervisor. I didn't like this because I worked so hard on my thesis and everything. But then I realized, no, she's right. And now after years, I realized that she was 100% right, because some of my peers who didn't have a transition during that time, so like they're facing a lot of difficulties even after PhD. So PhD doesn't mean that you get your dream job, but like you have to be very updated, and like your research should be state of the art, then it works. And same way, like these days, like as Sal is also mentioning, it's not just about the LLMs, but also there are many things that's going on. We have to update ourselves and be presentable for the challenges of the jobs. For example, like these days, if I see like the working environment is more hybrid, like live and remote, so you should be prepared for all these kind of role, like how you're going to work, and in a multicultural organization and all these things. So these are all the factors I think that's are needed. At least like if I have to give somebody advice to some of my mentees, I just say that update yourself and take some mentoring sessions. Sometimes your mentor is more useful to you than your direct supervisor. So these are all the factors, and there are many people who are volunteer to mentor you. So I think we can always reach out to those people.
Oh, I love that. And that's so interesting too. I mean, it's great that you had such a supervisor that was encouraging you to explore this, and that you listened to them, frankly.
Yeah.
You know, both of you, Sal and Shayna, both of you mentioned volunteering and projects as well. Are there specific types of projects that you would want people to do that like would get you particularly excited? Like if you saw a resume and they had volunteer work that focused on X, X would be like, yes, I need to talk to them. Is there something like that comes out for you?
So like when I see somebody resume and somebody want to volunteers me, like first of all, I definitely see the passion of the person, because sometimes a person, when he or she comes to you, he may not be very well prepared, but the person has the passion to learn. So they are always the best learners and they rise. Other than this, like related to my field, basically I see like they should have little bit component of this public health and healthcare and this fairness, because I know this is an area which is gaining most attention in the next 10 years. Like if you work in the public health and health equity and the fairness in machine learning or AI, composition of all these things is very unique. So I see these kind of things. If that's your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And Sal, same question for you. What are there specific types of volunteer work or experiences that would make a resume stand out for you?
Yeah, no, first of all, I would agree with China. I think first of all, I look for passion and just the ability to to have gone out and tried new things. That's something that I'm looking for, and it should be apparent when you are in an interview or speaking to the person who is hiring you. I think the other thing is, like, from a product management perspective, I think there are a lot of avenues now available for people to do things outside of work. So for instance, becoming a tester for a new product, going up on Product Hunt and becoming a product tester, for instance, giving valuable feedback, being able to show those skills. I think I would advise everyone to take Reforge. I'm a great supporter of Reforge as a product management program. If you're not doing that, you're missing out. So they have a lot of side projects on the side as well that you can be part of. Lenny's newsletter is amazing. So if you want to be a part of that and listen to podcasts, for instance, and they do a lot of, like, if you join his community, there is a lot of projects that are going on the side. You can take part of in those projects. So I think if you show that ability, that you have gone out, you understand the community, you have reached out to people, I have no doubt that you will be able to figure out what's going on in the work. So I think that's.
I love that. And one question, well, a few very tactical ones, since we've got about 3-4 minutes to go. One that comes up a lot, and certainly people are asking about now, is how important is a PhD? And so, Sal, obviously, you're coming at this from product management. You don't have a PhD. Do you recommend people get one in hindsight? And Shayna, we'll ask you afterwards as well.
No, not from a product management perspective. I think you don't need a PhD in product management. If you're going for a very deep technical AI role, then a PhD might help, but certainly not even for a technical program manager or a product manager you would need. For a very technical product, I would say masters would probably be the requirement, but there's nothing more.
And Shayna, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sel. Like many of these, I mean, high profile jobs, for example, the manager and being the director, they don't require the PhD. PhD is good if you are very much research focused. For example, like if I see my profile from the beginning, I always wanted to go very much into detail of the algorithm. So that forced me kind of to go towards the PhD. So that's what. PhD is required if there's certain jobs, for example, the scientist role or some assistant professor, associate professor, or research scientist, then PhD is required. But for all the other roles, I mean, at least the job postings I see, they don't require PhD. However, they require more versatile skills. And also in my experience, when I work with many people in Vector also and outside, so what I find, like sometimes the people who don't have the PhD, they sometimes provide very detailed and better solutions. So there's no bias that only PhD can give you the best solution. It's just that how the person see the problem, and the experience matter a lot. So that's why I think during your studies, whether you're doing bachelor's or master's, having some industry and academic kind of experience as we provide in the Vector also, I think that's the best case.
Oh, I love that. Okay, one last question, which is this one's very specific, but I'm actually very curious what both of you think. So someone mentioned NVIDIA's CEO, his recent comments that people don't need to learn to code because AI will do it for them one day. Shayna, agree or disagree, and why?
I disagree, because no matter how fast your chatbot or your robot or whatever that thing is, that like there's some ethical aspect which is missing in those things, that's for sure. And the human intervention is the best. Like we are the creators of the technology, and if they are going to lead us, that is not going to work. They can assist us, but they cannot, take the place of the people who have spent years of their life doing the coding and doing this stuff.
Fair enough. Sal, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I disagree as well. I think there's a lot of hot debate that's going out in the industry right now whether LLM are reasoning and planning agents, and the answer is not. They are not reasoning and planning agents. They are just they're not reasoning and planning agents. So until the technology gets to a point where they are actual intelligence, I don't think they can ever take up the role of a good 10x 100x developer.
Okay. Well, when we're running a webinar like this 5 or 6 years from now, we'll have to go back to the recording and see what happened. Well, thank you both very, very much for joining us. Any last words of advice before you drop off, Shayna, Sal?
No, I think you covered everything.
Yeah, I think you have covered everything. I totally agree.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this. You're getting lots of applause, virtual applause and hearts here. So we appreciate that you're both part of the Vector community, and I'm sure people will be reaching out to you as well. So thank you
Yeah,
both very much.
yeah.